the countless sheroes and heroes for staying in the fight for us. And we're very much looking forward to taking more action with all of you as we continue the fight for Black equity. We also want to thank the swift actions of this administration. But you didn't want to come to hear me today. So let's jump into our discussion. And so again, another reason why this is so important to us is because we recognize that today is only the start. So along with our partners, the Black Worker Juneteenth Coalition, there are two pillars of action that we'll be discussing today. One is passing the Crown Act, and two is passing national legislation regarding reparations for Black people. I want to jump into introducing our panel now. So first, we have Dr. Evangeline Savage, AKA Dr. Eve. Dr. Eve represents the North Carolina Black Women's Roundtable, and she's here to discuss the necessity of a National Crown Act. As the executive director, her career involves activating communities to improve the well-being of their neighborhoods by utilizing grassroots initiatives to include a United Nations integrated pilot project. Next on our panel, we have two activists, Lucretia Brits and Lodgson. Both of them will discuss the matter of national reparations legislation. Lucretia Brits is a Juneteenth and reparations organizer from Chicago, my hometown. She began her community organizing journey in 2014 around the issues of police accountability and criminal justice reform. She now concentrates on restorative and economic justice specifically for the Black community. In 2019, Lucretia founded the Black Remembrance Project and initiated a citywide campaign to get Juneteenth recognized as an official holiday in her city. In addition to coordinating local Juneteenth events, Lucretia volunteers with a few groups fighting for reparations for descendants of United States chattel slavery, including the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants. Next up, originally from New York City, now living in California, Lodgson is a legal researcher, organizer, and activist who advocates for Black businesses as well as reparative justice. He's also the creator and owner of SAC Black Business, Sacramento, California's largest and most active database and marketplace for Sacramento's local Black businesses. Last but not least, I'm not sure if she's joined us yet, but hopefully she will. We see that she's having some technical difficulties, so I'll introduce her just in case she makes it tonight. But we want to share and introduce with you Deborah Evans. Deborah is the founder of DAE Communications. She's also the founder of the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation in Nevada, where she was instrumental in the passage of the Nevada Juneteenth legislation and was presented with a signed bill by Governor Brian Scandival in 2011. She's a founding member of the historical West Side Society and has produced Juneteenth celebrations, flag raisings, and all sorts of cultural events in Las Vegas. We're going to get started with the question for all of our panelists. Okay, so I just want to hear from all of you all, especially in light of what the historic events of today. What does Juneteenth mean to each of you?
I guess I'll start. Again, I'm Lucretia Birds from Chicago, and Juneteenth means visibility for Black Americans, specifically Black American descendants of slavery and our issues in this country. It also means the acknowledgement of our struggles and our triumphs.
How about you, Chris?
Thanks for asking. Great question. Great panel, by the way, and great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And by the way, this is actually not my natural color, right? So what does Juneteenth mean to me? Juneteenth to me means a time where we stop and remember how our journey in this country started, those of us who descend from US slavery. And it's also a time to look at where we are and then also where we need to go. So it's really a time of remembrance.
Deborah.
Am I good? Okay. I'm sorry. I apologize. Right now, Juneteenth means success. We fought a long, hard fight, and we saw the signing this afternoon. And I see the future and expansion for the Juneteenth message, for a better future for our children, better education for our children.
No worries about being late. We're just so happy that you made it here. And I can think of no better way to close out that question. You know, Chris talked about Juneteenth representing our journey, how we got here, where we started, where we need to go. And I think that that's a really good segue for us to start talking about reparations. And I want to pass this over to Lucretia and Chris. I got a couple of questions for you both. When you think about or can you just, how about let's start off with the history. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of the work of reparations for Black people in this country and about how you and your organizations got involved in that work? Chris, we can start with you.
All right, I'm definitely unmuted now. So let's talk about the history of reparations, right? Briefly, and this will be like the Cliff Notes version of it, right? And then I'll pass the mic to Lucretia to talk about how we sort of got, how us young folks got involved. So you really have to go back to us, really, as a people, fighting while we were enslaved, believe it or not, for reparations. This actually starts before emancipation. This work, most notably, and I'm going to say her name here and then say her book's name, Callie House, My Face is Black is True, is the name of the book. And Callie House will tell you her own story about how she, as an ex-enslaved person, one of our ancestors, was fighting for reparations back in the late 1800s and started an organization called, I believe, the Pension Benefits and a Mutual Aid Society. I believe the name is the organization, but that organization's job was to fight for pensions for those who were formerly enslaved. So this really begins with us, really. We were the first to fight for our own liberation. And it continues through the late 1800s, 1900s, and really picks up more steam in the 60s, 70s, and 80s with the introduction of what is now called the Act to create the Act to create a commission to study and develop reparations for African Americans, or what we call now HR 40, or its twin sister in the Senate, S40. So this really starts with us, and I'll stop there and let Lucretia talk about how we got involved.
I also just want to highlight the 1980s as well as a pivotal point. So we know that the Japanese Americans, they got reparations for internment camps in America. And so during that time, in like after 1988, through the American Civil Liberties Act, there was a Congressman John Conyers, who introduced H.R. 40. And that was, 30 plus years ago, that he introduced H.R. 40, and he reintroduced it every year. And after he left the House, it was taken over by Sheila Jackson Lee, and that's who is the champion for it now. And you could say that this new wave of reparations advocates, we came into the fold, myself and Chris, and a whole movement of other folks, influenced by folks like Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore, Dr. William Darity. We were introduced, I would say, to this reemergence of reparations advocacy after learning about the racial wealth gap. So learning that Black people have, I want to say, about $1,200 as a family unit compared to $100,000 that white people have. And that's just a rough estimate, but like it's a big difference, right? $100,000 versus $1,200. That's the average distance between wealth between Black Americans and white Americans in this country. And specifically, not all Black Americans, but specifically Black American descendants of slavery have a huge deficit in terms of wealth in this country. And it's directly because of slavery. So people like myself and Chris, we met through like online advocacy. We formed an organization now known as the NAASD, and we have been advocating for federal reparations. We support a revised version of HR 40 because we feel like there are things that we can do to strengthen HR 40. But my friend Chris over here is being very humble because not only has he been advocating for federal reparations, but also in California, Chris can tell you about how he is one of the lead organizers to help pass the state California reparations bill. So I'm going to let Chris say a little bit more about that.
Oh, can I really talk about that, really?
Yeah, please do, Chris.
Okay,
Don't
cool.
be modest.
Yeah, I was trying to be modest, but we're all family, right? So,
That's right.
so no, Lucretia's right, and there is let me actually start by this. One, I want to welcome everybody to history, and not just because of what happened today, but because just in what happened this year, really, within the last 2 or 3 months, the Federal Reparations Commission bill, what we just described as HR 40, has moved further than any reparations legislation since the Civil War. And that happened this year with the, I believe, mid-April markup or, hearings, right, for HR 40 in the House Judiciary Committee. And right now, this federal reparations legislation, the only one we really have, is on its way to the House floor to be voted on by all 435 members of the U.S. House of Representatives. So let me stop here and say, welcome everyone to a place we've never been with respect to reparations. Second thing to say is, yes, I have been very lucky, actually, to help and be helped by some amazing community members and organizers here in the city of Sacramento and state of California, and really start our work back in 2019 to make sure that California creates a task force to study and develop reparations proposals itself, and to look at what California did and what role California played and what California can do now to correct the things that it has wrong with respect to our people, right? Those of us who descend from U.S. slavery. So I've been very lucky again to, it's really a lot of people working on this right now. We are working to ensure that this task force, which just started on June 1st, and will have as many as 10 meetings and work for over 2 years. This work itself is some of the most important work that I've ever done. It's some of the most important work that I've ever been a part of. I feel lucky, very, very lucky. And right now, our job with respect to the task force is to ensure that the task force is open and responsive to community voices, and to ensure that the task force ultimately gets to what we call the right types of reparations proposals. And we have some ideas about what the right types of reparations proposals look like. So I'm very lucky, and thank you, Lucretia, for that shout out, because this is big news, and this is also another first in history. There's not been a state to ever do this ever. So we are really writing our own stories here. And yeah, I'll stop there.
Wow, so I've got, this is so dope. Y'all are dropping history and facts. I love it. That's exactly what we need today. So we are so far removed, I'm sure, like we're from the conversations of 40 acres and a mule. But I know people want to dig into, what exactly are some of the ways that you envision or imagine reparations changing the lives of Black people in America?
Well, first, I want to say that I want to let people know that reparations is direct payments. And I've been seeing this narrative. Well, we've been seeing this narrative out here since HR 40 is getting closer to, being passed, that legislators are saying, like, education is reparations, or access to loans is reparations. We know that when it comes to the Jewish Holocaust, the Japanese internment, they all receive direct compensation, okay? And so we believe that Black people deserve direct compensation. So in terms of, what the future holds, we will be fighting for direct compensation, okay? What Black enslaved people in this country experienced was not, we deserve money for our hardships, right? Being kidnapped and snatched over here, but also we did unpaid labor, for centuries. And there was also land theft and a whole bunch of other things, right? But you cannot rectify that with just education. Like, first of all of us in this country should be entitled to education, right? So like, why fight for that? We're fighting for direct payments for Black people. And if there is a wealth gap, which I discussed earlier, right? Like, white people have this $100,000 on average for their family wealth. Black people have $1,200. The only way to make that right is to put money in Black people's pockets. And we know that money can be put in people's pockets because we just saw that with COVID, the COVID-19 pandemic, and with stimulus checks. They dubbed out money like instantly, right? In a blink, right? And so we know that it can happen, but this country has had an unwillingness to do so. So you will see more Black people fighting for direct payments because, we don't want to be bamboozled. We want what everybody else got when it came to reparations. They got direct payments. We deserve direct payments too.
Preach, Lucretia, I love it. And that just leads me to ask the question. So how far along do you think we currently are in passing this comprehensive reparations bill? And what are the barriers that we're facing?
If I could take a stab at that part, well, one, thank you, Lucretia, for speaking facts right there, because you were speaking some real facts, right? And so, but let me let's talk about where we are. So, if the current legislation right now, the national legislation, the national reparations legislation right now that exists, HR 40 and its carbon copy, what we call its companion bill or its twin sister S40 in the Senate. Those bills create commissions to study and develop reparations proposals, okay? That's what those bills do. Let's be clear, they do not actually create the reparations proposals. They bring together the group of people whose job it is to create the reparations proposals, right? So in terms of time, we are, and how far we are to the reparations proposals, just like, some like legal math, we're at least as long as it takes to pass just the commission bill, plus the time it's going to take to create the proposals, which is probably going to be a year or two, looking at how the bills are structured now. And here's one of the ways we think these bills can be strengthened, and something that we've had to deal with here in California as we worked on our state bill. These bills create people or create the group who's going to create the proposal, right? That's what I just said. But what happens to those proposals? There's no law saying those proposals have to be, done, right? So we have another fight to actually get the good reparations proposals actually into law. So it's at least going to take the amount of time that it took that. If we take an example from history, Lucretia is exactly right to talk about the Japanese internment case, right? Our fellow Japanese American brothers and sisters, right? Here in Sacramento, like literally here in Sacramento, I'm in the neighborhood where people were snatched out of, like right now sitting, and taken a few miles up, and locked up, right? But for those folks, it took first a reparations commission bill, so that took a couple of years. Then it took a few more years for a bill to do what the reparations proposal said. So in total, it probably took about 8, maybe 10 years. I feel like we're toward the beginning of that work, but the fact that we are now in the phase of the work where we're actually talking about, that's my Alexa. Sorry, sorry, not sorry. We're at the phase of the work where we're now talking about actually active legislation and actual legislation moving. So in phases, we're further along than we've ever been. In this phase, we're still in the beginning of our work.
That's so dope. And I know that with having folks like you, Chris and Lucretia in our corner, that we will get there. In our lifetime, we will get there. This is just such an important conversation. I really appreciate, Lucretia, you spitting facts about, we want our coins, right? It's not about something that we can't put in our pockets, something that doesn't build wealth for ourselves, for our people, generational wealth. We want what's due to us. And then also, Chris, when you talk about the necessity of strengthening bills and moving legislation, I think that that's a natural segue, because it's not just about reparations that we want to talk about. We also want today to talk about the Crown Act, right? And so when I think about coins, when I think about strengthening bills and legislation, we can't help but want to also address the Crown Act, which has a direct impact, right, on Black people's ability to wear their hair naturally as it comes out of their hair, as it grows out of their head, and not be penalized in the workplace and in public schools. And so I want to pivot over to Dr. Savage and ask you if you could tell us a little bit about the history of the campaign for a National Crown Act and about how you got involved in the work.
Sure. I just want to, I'm sorry, Dr. Savage, I appreciate your insight so much. I just wanted, before you get into your specific expertise, I just wanted to let everybody know that we want to have everybody take action while we're learning about different things, whether it be the Crown Act, reparations, or making Juneteenth a national holiday. My comrade Isaiah Withers will be dropping links in the chat, so you can message your elected officials to make sure that there is action actually taken on all these things. But yes, I'll pass it back over to Dr. Eve.
Thank you so much. Again, it is an honor to be here. And I think the best way to feel this is if I just shared a little story with you. I reflect back on a time when my daughter was probably about the age of maybe eight. Vibrant, creative, artist, eclectic, just an amazing, joyful, abundant little girl. And she was very into making her own decisions or being creative about her style, right? You may find her wearing different colored socks or shoes that are painted differently, or ever since she was a year old, she's always kept pens and pencils and artistry in her arsenal. So she's everything arts, dancing and singing and playing 5 different instruments and all of these things. This is the vibrant little girl at 8 years old. Well, one day she decided that she no longer wanted this long, straight hair. What beauty pageants like to see assimilate into a thing, right, in order to be inclusive, right? And she decided that she wanted to wear her curls. She wanted curls, and we had a long discussion about what that would look like and what that meant, and that meant, in order to do that, we'd have to, chop, chop. And so we gave her some time to really think about that, and we had conversations about it, read some stories, all of the interventions that were needed to prepare her for that next step. And it obviously was absolutely not enough. And so one day we decided, she says, "Okay, mommy, I'm ready." We went to the salon, and, my heart was, just palpitating, what's this going to be like for days to come, because I know what we're about to embark upon. And so we went through the big chop. And of course, she had a mini fro, and she looked at it. And at some point, she loved what she saw. Her family loved what they saw. Her father, we all embraced it. It was powerful, a powerful move for a little girl to decide that she wants to do this. But what she would be met with on the other side of that socially was disheartening. She was met with, friends who would no longer looked at her a very different way, or family who said, "Why would you do such a thing?" Or her friends who began to bully her, losing trust. And she went through a host of mental health issues along this journey. As a parent, I'm in a difficult position. And I got to figure out quickly how to address this problem that we have. And because this vibrant little girl is melting, her self-acceptance now is bottoming out. At that point, as a mother, my job was to transition. How could I make this thing and, as easy for her as possible? So it was in that moment, I transitioned, I clipped my hair and, started to growing it out and saying, we're going to do this. We're going to rock these fros together, and this was long before little girls in schools begin to embrace the idea of, okay, I want to cut my hair. This is a thing, a wave, and it's more than a wave. It is more about accepting who we are as humans. It's more about accepting our culture, our birthright, our human right to be equal, to be ourselves. And in that moment, we went through. It was a roller coaster ride for us, and so for me, when the Crown Act, or as a Black woman who I wake up every day to this fight, being a Black woman and fighting for Black women and Black girls, Black men and Black boys. So that's my story, right? Is fighting for us. And so at that moment, I became extremely involved, and always been an activist in my community. But I was driven to a young woman named Shemeka Ebony and Dr. Ramallah, who are the co-founders of the Crown Campaign, got involved and started building a village around when the Crown Act was passed. Originally, it was passed in California. And at that point, what we know and understand in the work that we do on the ground is that you can't do a single thing or make any kind of impact or movement significantly without people with lived experience. And so in that moment, it became imperative, to take that journey, with Shemeka and the co-founders of the Crown Village. The Crown Village is a movement that adds value to the passing of a bill or an act, because you can pass an act, but unless you have the people in community, those with lived experiences all over, wherever it is you're passing these bills, you have no teeth. you have nothing to fight with. You have no one to hold them accountable for the things that they're going to do, or the decisions that they are making outside of the ruling of a bill. And so in that moment, we began to move through the process of supporting the wave that was going on around the country to pass the Crown Act. And as the executive director of the North Carolina Black Women Roundtable, my role is to build human capacity for civic engagement alongside assuring economic and political impacts and wellness for Black women. In that role, this was a good fit. So we became very active in that process, Crown for NC, and how can we get the Crown passed in North Carolina? And so we began by literally just starting in our cities, delegations, where we could, move through proclamations and resolutions, and it began to take a little bit of a wave. Well, the Crown Act was finally introduced to our House representatives and Senate here by Senator Natalie Murdoch, and I'm looking at this because I don't want to mess their names up. Representative DeAndrea Salvador in District 29, and Senator Natalie Murdoch in District 20, and also Senator Valerie Fouché, I believe it is, in District 23. They filed the bill entitled the North Carolina Crown Act, better known as Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair. The bill was drafted in partnership with the Crown Act Campaign Coalition, composed of organizations Crown Campaign, Action NC, North Carolina Black Women's Roundtable. And just to clarify, Black women have felt societal problems and pressures to change their natural hair to adapt to the predominantly white spaces for too long. For North Carolina to truly have non-discriminatory practices, we have to take a stance against hair discrimination. Natural hair is sacred to our Black people and should be welcomed in the workplace, school systems, athletic environments, and in places of daily living. And this is a quote from Murdoch, Senator Murdoch. It's been quite a journey, even introducing this bill into the House and into the Senate. We're in a really tough place right now. With this bill being on the desk of the chair Senator Barone, and it was introduced into rules, hopefully to cross over into the Judiciary Committee, and did not cross over. In a last minute ditch effort, I reached out to our tax and budget office for a budget provision, not requesting any dollars, just requesting to be heard in a last ditch effort. So built out a strategy to have conversations with, our senator and House co-sponsors in hopes that those who are sitting on the Appropriations Committee could see this bill as worthy. I'd like to elaborate just a little bit more. As a practitioner, and I'm going to move from being a executive director of North Carolina Black Women's Roundtable, but as a practitioner of health and human services, one of the Health and Human, so United States Department of Health and Human Services says, health is the highest form of equity. Health. That means our overall health. How is that defined? Well, we have five, according to our 2030 framework, there are 5 domains. Those domains include our economic stability. We know that having to assimilate non-acceptance of our hair in the workplace, we now got to go out and buy or forge budgets for products to maintain assimilation into European middle-class norms, whatever y'all want to call that. And so that's the economic stability side of things. Not only is that one of the domains, but we have our access to education. And how is that affecting our education in the school system? We can see all over the country where students are being banned from graduations and banned from as young as 3 in preschools to conform to a certain look or certain hairstyle. Young boys, if they want to, what is it? Samson wore his hair his hair was his crown, but we have to cut our hair in schools. Is that the rule? Right. And so they're designing these codes.
Recording in progress.
These codes for us to have to conform to, and making it and kicking out literally our babies, saying unless we can conform to these things, then they cannot come back to school, right? And so there is that access to quality education includes accessing the ability to be in school, right? And who defines what our hair should look like? I'm just taken aback at how we can be so desensitized to humanity. And so then as we move on to that trajectory, the next domain is access to quality health care. Well, when we over-perm and overuse products in our hair, what does that cause? It causes balding. It causes all kinds of effects to our skin, to our hair, chemicals. Why should we have to conform and assimilate and why should this have to be a thing for us, right? So, and the next domain is, of course, access, social and community context. It's our culture. We have a right to reserve our culture and our place in society, just like the rest of humanity. And finally, there is our our neighborhoods and built environments. So let's think about it. We have 5 domains and 353 social determinants of health. And at what point do we do the right thing? And so I'm asking each and every one of you out there today. It's my story, and it's the story of many. It's the story of every Black woman who chooses to wear her hair in a natural way. We are not discounting those who choose to wear it the way you want, but don't make policies or codes or rules and men as well, that impact our ability to accept who we are as humans, right? That is a mental health problem. And we have enough, needless to say, we have enough to address in our culture, not to have another added thing. And so when I think about the crown and how important it is, it's important for us to move. It is important for us to say yes. It's important for us to pass. What is it to think about? What is there to think about when you're talking about a job? Were you ever on a job? Were you on a job where you knew that you offered up more than they expected from you, but you knew that you weren't moving up the ladder because you embraced your culture? I was that woman.
Yeah. That's a lot. Let's just drop the mic on that, right? And take a moment to just stop and process all that you have shared with us. That's so deep. And I really appreciate where you started when you told the story of your daughter, right? And it is about, one, us accepting who we are, and then realizing why it's so hard to do that when the greater culture does not accept us as who we are. And you summed it up perfectly. That's why the Crown Act is so important, right? We know historically the Supreme Court at one point ruled that Black people could not be discriminated against because of their hair texture, because they had the means and the ability to alter it, right? Not taking into consideration that our hair is such a strong part of who we are and how we show up in this country. I really appreciate what you shared. I want to just ask you, so then how do you envision that the passage of the Crown Act would change the daily lives of Black folks. I think about when we first heard about Delta Airlines changing their policy that people could wear their hair naturally as it grew out of their head. The military saying that women could wear their hair in braids. Even UPS changed its practices, saying that men could wear beards and women could wear their hair, in styles that were relevant and part of our culture. What other ways do you think that the Crown Act will change the daily lives of Black people?
When I think about, I think most humbly about our schools, most humbly about our children as we begin, we're talking about the reparations. We need to be talking about the legacy that we leave behind. And so for me, it's all about the legacy. It's all about what we fought for and why. And so while we as adults have gone through and endured, what we don't want to leave behind is a legacy that had to be having the same conversations, our children to be having the same conversations when they become adults. And so for me, that's the defining factor in this moment.
Wow, thank you so much. I think for each one of these topics, clearly we could be here for 7, 8 more hours, a full day, just really going into depth. But I want to keep it moving because we've got one more dynamic panelist that we want to hear from today, especially because Juneteenth was passed as the Juneteenth national holiday, National Day of Freedom being recognized throughout our country. And so I want to pivot now to Deborah and ask her to give us a little bit of history. We started with so many others talking about the history of these acts and bills that are so important in our communities and especially for Black people. Share with us, if you will, a bit about the history of Black people campaigning to make Juneteenth a national holiday. You have to come off mute.
Dee, it's been a long day.
I think she dropped off.
I do want to raise
We
up.
can't hear you, Miss D. We can't hear you.
Before Miss D,
I'm listening and I'm learning. I cannot say that I've had the difficulties with reparations or with the hair issue. So I'm basically here to learn that point of view. I have been strictly working Juneteenth from the last point for nearly 20 years. And now that we've gotten the Juneteenth bill signed on, I'm willing to listen and see where our next move would be.
Can you tell us a bit about, I think you were muted before, can you tell us about the history of the struggle to make where we are today a reality, passing the bill for Juneteenth?
Well, struggle started 30 years ago. Reverend Ronald V. Myers, senior medical missionary, started, he attended a meeting in New Orleans in 1994, which resulted in him starting the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation. And from 1994 until his death in 2018, he traveled the country advocating for Juneteenth. We were surprised this week. We felt that this was going to be our year, but 2 days ago, we did receive the surprise that they had made the decision to take the vote and that they were going to take the vote yesterday for the second part of the bill. And we were even more surprised to find out that today they were going to do the signing. I'm not sure exactly why they rushed it through. I mean, after 30 years of waiting, that we got the bill passage, but the people who had worked on the bill, I was disappointed to find that we were not given the opportunity to travel to Washington and spend time getting the recognition, giving the recognition for the things that had been accomplished, other than Miss Opal. Miss Opal had, at 94, she has walked for Juneteenth since 2016. Mm-hmm. Last year, she did her 2.5 mile walk in front of 100. She led 100 cars in a caravan by foot last year.
Wow.
So yes, I'm happy Miss Opal was there, but Mrs. Myers and her children, they did a lot of sacrificing while Doc was on the road to get recognition for Juneteenth. So I'm sorry that she was not able to attend, was not given the opportunity. Betty Sawyer has been one of our board members for nearly 30 years. She's been doing Juneteenth for nearly 40 years, even before and so she was, she did not have the chance to get out there. I was not given the opportunity, but during that time, we have accumulated representatives in all 50 states. And our next move now is education, so we go forward. And as far as the reparations issue, I think Juneteenth had to be recognized first before we could go to the reparation issues, because how can you get reparations for something that has not been discussed? And we've spent all those years where they refused to talk about us, refused to acknowledge our history, our contributions. They wanted to take the road that they had given us our freedom when they did not. We had U.S. colored troops in Galveston, Texas in 1865. And so we went out there and we did it for ourselves. I don't care what they say. They went through the town, they came back and told Granger that you're going to do something before we leave town, or we will. They're still holding our people enslaved for 2.5 years. And so the descendants of those Galveston residents from 1865 know Juneteenth as the day that the Black men came to town with guns and gave us our freedom. And that's one of the stories. We have an education group that is actually going through newspapers, family papers, books, trying to find the true stories. And of course, as you know, we still did not have true freedom because the Emancipation Proclamation only covered the Confederacy, so that was only 11 states. And going forward, the Native Americans held us enslaved for another year. But once they freed us in 1866, the 5 tribes, we went on to establish 89 towns in the Western Territories, one of which became Tulsa. So we're connected to the Tulsa massacre, the Black Wall Street success, and the issues that came with it. So we say all things Juneteenth, because as you take each subject in our history, we can weave it back into 1865. We can take it back into 1619 coming forward, where we came in as indentured servants, more so than slaves. We were not slaves for at least another 40 years. It was like 1861 before slavery actually existed. We need to get the message out. We need to get the correct information and message out to everyone.
Amen. That's our history. And too much of our history is not taught. It's not easily accessible. And and that's another struggle, right? That we need to uplift. And it's not just Black history, it's American history. And we need to make sure that everyone knows it. I'm so appreciative of, again, just more facts, more history being spitted by our panel today. One of the things that I think about that can be a learning for us all, Deborah, is if you would share with us some of the barriers that you all experienced in getting this legislation passed. I think it could be a learning for those working on the Crown Act and in reparations.
It was political. It's still political. It was political, and like I said, we were not really given the fact to even come to the White House today for that recognition. Less than 24 hours after the bill was passed, they had it signed, and Steve Williams and I believe Michael Myers are the only ones that were there. Dr. Myers' son were the only ones, that, along with Miss Opal, that were able to that were invited. I did not receive an invitation for that, even though I've spent nearly 20 years working on that. But we are our own worst enemies also. There's another Juneteenth group here in Las Vegas, and for years the community tried to cause problems between the two of us. She was here a little bit longer than we were, but there's enough Juneteenth for everyone. We worked from the legislative end. We worked with Assemblyman Munford and got the state bill passed, while the other group was doing theirs more so as a scholarship program, and they functioned with entertainment. They are doing 1 3-hour event this year. After I complete 18 events this month, and when I finish at 5, they're going to pick up at 6 and do 3 hours. And when we got the acknowledgement of the passage from one of our representatives, her name was included along with ours, even though she has never really pushed the bill. So we don't fight for ourselves enough. It's more of cliques and families and who's sticking with who.
Well, I think that one of the things that you just lifted up is so important, right? When you said that Juneteenth is for everyone, Juneteenth is for on the West Coast, the East Coast, the North, the South. It's for everyone, for all people, because Juneteenth represents freedom. Freedom not only from slavery, but freedom from discrimination, freedom from harassment, freedom from bullying. And I think that is the legacy that we all are standing on. And so I'm going to ask you, like I've been asking the other folks tonight, how does making Juneteenth a national holiday, in your opinion, change the landscape for Black life in America?
I think it's going to open more doors to acknowledgement that it existed. It will give us a better chance to open doors for education, to go back and correct the fallacies that are out there. We have so many stories that are untrue, incomplete, or incorrect. Granger did not ride in on a horse to free us in Texas. First of all, Galveston is an island. He came in on a ship, and he was on his way to Mexico. He stopped off for food and water. He didn't come to help us. So those are something. And yet, who's been getting the credit for 156 years? Granger went to Texas to free the slaves. He did not do it. Abraham Lincoln freed a slave back in 1841 before he became president. He went to the Illinois Supreme Court. You don't think of Illinois as a slave territory. He went there with a woman who had 4 children. The youngest one was 10 months old. Well, we found her son, William Costley, in Galveston in 1865. He was one of those colored troops, soldiers that helped release the people in Galveston. So I think that with the bill passage, maybe we will get more people who will volunteer, more people who will help us research our history and correct the fallacies, as I say, get the story out. We have we have something called Juneteenth 101 on our website, which is at www.njof.org, and it is a breakout of history from 1862 to 1867 that we released last year. This year, we are expanding that into a curriculum, which will be available to everyone, and it will be done in a Sunday school manner with a teacher's guide. And so hopefully people will start reading. They'll remember the fact that 150 years ago, we were not allowed to learn how to read. Now that we have the right to read, I would like to see everyone with library cards on the computer doing history as opposed to TikTok and crazy dances and pouring bleach on themselves. I'm hoping that maybe we're not going to get everybody, but it's just like you would take a roll of film in the old days and 36 pictures. If you had one good picture, then you had success, So I'm hoping that for all the people that we meet and get the word to, that there is one person in each group that will go forward, that will share with their children, their neighbors, their grandchildren, and there'll be a better world for my great-grandchildren.
That's exactly right. I love that we're building a better world. That's what it's all about. And I know for a fact that it will be more than one. It will be droves and droves of people. That's how we got to today. And we will do nothing but continue. And the haters don't hate, but we're not going to let them stop our hustle or our shine. I want to stop talking and asking my questions because I know there are others that want to reach out and ask you all some questions as well. So I'm going to ask two of the staff members from the National Black Worker Center, Taylor Davis and Isaiah Withers, to open up the chat for questions.
Yeah, so I'll be checking the chat on the Zoom meeting, and then Isaiah will be checking the chat on the Facebook event. But I just wanted to plug one more time before we get into that you know, we are all learning a lot right now about both Juneteenth, the Crown Act, and also reparations, and our learning should be moving us towards action. So Isaiah will drop in the chat just a few links where you can take some actions, reaching out to your local representatives, and also just making sure that your voice is heard when it comes to all of these three pillars that we're speaking about today. And thank you for dropping that in the chat, Isaiah. And let me just check to see, y'all just drop your questions and we'll be sure to forward them to everyone else. Let me see. I don't see any questions currently in the Zoom chat. I don't know, Isaiah. Is there anything in the Facebook?
I would love to hear from the Association Black Women Historians. That's a fantastic thought that has been offered to us. And I would love to make sure that someone on the committee, on the panel here, will make a connection with me.
Definitely, we'll be happy to share everyone's contact information. I think that that's exactly right, Deborah, right, that the way that we continue to build, to grow, is to be in coalition and solidarity with one another. And so encourage everyone to connect with all of the panelists and with the National Black Worker Center to keep doing this work. If there are no questions in the chat, I'm going to jump right back in because I've got another question that I want to lift up in regards to Juneteenth. And it's, how do we prevent our movement from being commercialized and co-opted by non-Blacks? Like, the last thing that I want to see 5 years from now is a mattress, the Juneteenth mattress sale. You know, so what can we do to make sure that there's a movement that continues and it doesn't get commercialized? Deborah, sounds like you're ready to jump in on that one.
I'm hoping that we do not have a pancake bottle with someone there and the syrup and our picture on it. We have that difficulty now. We do everything. My organization is doing everything free to the public. We don't charge, right now we're not charging memberships. We accept donations. However, there's another organization out there that's having a breakfast tomorrow morning. They're selling tickets $65 to $500 for a breakfast. They have not been in the movement. They have not pushed Juneteenth, but here they come. Last week, all of a sudden, we see that they are doing breakfast. We do prayer breakfasts, but we're not asking anybody for a $65 ticket. So I do have that fear, and we saw this coming even before the bill was given to us for review. We know that this is going to be a difficult thing, and we cannot be responsible for other people. All we can do is be responsible for ourselves. So I hope that there are some people with consciences out there. I know that we will continue to work on. Now, this is actually my first year of even looking at grants, and for the most part, for the last 15 years, I have paid the majority of the Juneteenth events in Las Vegas out of my own pocket. And if you will speak to our directors across the country, there's quite a few of them that will be able to say the same thing, that we, rather than to ask someone that's going to come back later and want to say, well, we did this for you, now you owe us, or we need a table and we want to vend. No, when we have a table, we have a vendor section, it's only for information. We're still
unbossed and unbossed. I love that. Unbought and unbossed. Lucretia, I saw that you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in on this because I've been seeing a lot of comments around commercialization of Juneteenth in my area as well, because actually, and signed by Biden, this Monday, myself and the Black Remembrance Project, Black Culture Week, and a lot of other coalitional partners in Chicago, we had a flag raising ceremony in the city of Chicago. And Ms. D would tell you, we ordered the biggest flag that the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation has ever made to order.
The only custom flag of that size. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and it was a big event, a big celebration, and I was so disheartened. I've been fighting in Chicago to make Juneteenth a citywide paid holiday since 2019. And once the mayor announced on Monday that she was going to actually move forward with making it a city holiday, there was so many negative comments. And I think that a lot of Black people are afraid, they're thinking about this from a negative aspect. We want to hold on to this little piece of Juneteenth because we don't want other people to have it. But by us holding on to it in that way, it made it so that not a lot of Black people knew the history. To the point that Ms. D was speaking earlier, like myself and even the legislators that were on the stage with me at the flag raising ceremony, many of them admitted to not knowing about Juneteenth until they were adults. We didn't grow up learning about it. It wasn't in our school books. There's so much of our history missing. And I know some people are worried about the commercialization, but I'm not as worried. And you know why I'm not as worried is because I believe that Black people have a genuine desire to support one another. And I think that once we demonstrate that we're out here doing the work, I know that our brothers and sisters will buy shirts from us. They will donate to the organizations that are out here doing the work. And Miss D has been very, very humble on this panel. She didn't tell y'all, but the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation, they are the organization that sells the actual Juneteenth flags. They've been doing the work and holding this space for Juneteenth, as she mentioned, for decades. They've been advocating for it, and they're the ones who got Juneteenth federal legislation to the finish line. I know for a fact that I'm going to make sure that in Chicago, that our people pay homage to the NOJF, the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation. And I'm going to make sure, we just have to do our part to let people know who's behind the work, who's doing the work, so we can support those groups and those people. And also, we have to be careful. I saw online someone saying that white people are making shirts for Juneteenth to make a profit. We have to do our due diligence, right, to check who we're doing business with. So we're not buying Juneteenth shirts from anybody. We need to make sure we're buying from Black people. And I think we'll be okay. I know that people are concerned about the commercialization of this holiday, but just think about all the positives that come with this. Now you get a paid day off, right? Yes. Thank you, Ms. D. Yeah, actually, let's clap it up. I see people clapping. They deserve the work. They got this holiday made into an actual holiday. They've been putting in that work, and they deserve all the recognition. And I hope everybody leaves here today knowing NOJF, the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation. But I'll shut up because I've been talking for too much.
No, you're good. You're good.
I would like to just ask you that if you see anything with that Juneteenth flag on it, give me a call because I got lawyers waiting for them. It is a copy.
That's it, Ms. D.
The Juneteenth flag is copyright. It was designed by a Black man. They're trying to say that it's a white man. It was not. I can assure you that Ben Haith is very Black, very militant at times. His mentality, his spirit is Black. He designed the flag. Yes, there was a woman that he had to have as a graphic designer, but he has the copyright. The National Juneteenth Observance Foundation is the only organization that has the authority to administer the flag. We have the Sandra Day O'Connor School of Law out of Arizona with attorneys waiting. We are going after Amazon again this year. They keep doing it. Last year there was 23. I'm not even sure. This year I'm sure with the bill there's going to be more of them. We do have, if you want one of the t-shirts that I'm showing you, you can go to our representatives. We have an organization called reallyliveit.com, REALLY liveit.com, really live it. They are right now the only authorized people that we have to do the t-shirts. If you want a flag, you can contact me and I can get your order processed through Provisions, which is our company that's doing the flags right now. And we will at some point, if you want to use the flag, it's not that you cannot use the flag. What we're saying is send us a letter, tell us you want to use the image of the flag, how you want to use the flag, show us a sample, and then our committee will approve or disapprove use of the flag. And that right now we are maintaining the control from that point, and that is what we have done for years. But now, as I say, we do have the legal school that will be working with us, and they will be working with our representatives across the country to maintain the rights to the flag. We do not, we're not giving it to anyone just to put it on a coffee cup or a doll or anything like that. Right now, we are maintaining control until we can build a plan up and follow. I mean, at some point, yes, we will eventually get to a Walmart or somewhere because we're going with the evolution of the legislation. More people know we're going to have a larger company that can supply the flag. But again, we're going to have to try to maintain our own control. And our people, again, is their worst enemy. I got a call today from Pennsylvania. She has the Juneteenth flag flying yesterday. They put the bill through. She called this morning. Someone had pulled it down and put the garbage red, black, and green flag up in its place.
Wow.
So
I love what Lucretia said. We are going to be okay, and that for certain is the truth. I want to just check in and see with Taylor. Do we have any questions in the chat? And
yes, I have some questions from the Zoom chat, and then I'll pass it over to Isaiah after I raise these up. The first one is from Shai Raleigh. Is asking, is there an organization that helps Black people focus on investing their money or reparations on better business or property choices? And just asking for those to be given, if folks are aware of that.
That's
something that you could. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lucretia.
No. You what were you gonna say? I'm sorry, Tanya.
No, I was wondering if Chris could speak to that, but if you can, that'd be great.
The exact name of an organization is escaping me, but I know for certain that there is a Black organization dedicated to land, to getting land and helping Black people access land, and they also fight for reparations, but I cannot think of their name right now. I'm gonna have to come back to you on that.
And I have a little bit on that too, just real quick. So it sounded like the question is about. It sounds like the question is about, are there organizations right now that are helping us get ready for reparations, right? And the answer to that question is not enough. I don't know of any organizations that are specifically working on preparing us in some way. But what I would like to say is that if we design a reparations package well, we will have a period or a part of it, if we do it well, that will, one, prepare us, right? And then also part of reparations, the reparations that we talk about includes protections, protections for the wealth that will be coming our way, right? So we are definitely gonna want to prepare, and there's gotta be prep work done, specific intentional prep work done. And I don't know of anyone who's doing anything specific like that now. But again, I think if we design the reparations proposals well enough, we will build into them ways to make sure that we don't just give our wealth right back away, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's a fear that people have, right? And it's some of it, and it's definitely well placed, right? Some of it's also based on some ideas that other people have of us. Like, we don't know how to manage our money well, right? That's a super myth, right? Black folks manage our money. If you control for income, and there's a bunch of data on this, right? If you control for income, Black folks manage our money better than white folks, okay? We just have very little of it. Okay, so we manage, and talk to any of our mothers, brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts from the generations prior to us. Ask them what they did with what the little they had, and tell me we don't know how to manage what we got, right? But thank you for the question.
And thank you for that, Christopher, because I'm in total agreement with what Christopher is saying. And I know that for years, when we began talking about reparations, it was critically important, the one word, prepare, right? Knowing, positioning ourselves so that when we receive our 40 acres and a mill, that we know how and where to, and how to use our money. One of the most unknown things to us in this moment is our trust funds, making sure that we understand what that looks like, understand how to build wealth, and in building wealth, how to keep more of your money, even if it's a little bit. I know one of my friends always said, we've done so much with so little for so long. And we have, but even with your little, establishing a trust fund for your family, a family foundation, a family, a place to give your money to, even to your 501c3. You can have such a thing, they do it, right? And put your house in a trust. It's separate now. Land trust, your business trust, making sure, and it's not hard to do this stuff, but it's important that we take time to learn these methodologies and implement them as quickly as we learn them, so that we are keeping more of our money. It's not by accident that this leak that we just heard about, these are steps they took, and it's capitalism. They just didn't tell us about it. There are things we can do, folks, but we have to be willing to turn off the tube, turn to some things, and be in community with one another to learn those strategic things that we need to for our to leave a legacy.
Lucretia, I saw that your hand was up.
Yes, I know that Black people, we want to feel really empowered, and everything that Dr. Eve Savage said was true. Like we do need to kind of create a legacy plan and make sure that we're leaving something behind for our people. I know that I don't have no money, so what I'm leaving behind is the community organizing work that I'm doing for my people. But I wanted to say also that, again, when you look at the data, I know I mentioned $100,000 to $1,200,000. It's very little in comparison. You know what I'm saying? And economists said that Black people were slated to be at zero wealth as on average by 2053. Right? We were slated for zero wealth. Y'all can look that up. It's featured in a lot of different articles talking about that number. And guess what? That was before the pandemic. So now that the pandemic has happened, imagine what place we're in collectively. There is no way to, insurance our way out of this. There's no way, we really don't have a lot to leave to our people. And I think a lot of Black people, we want to feel really good about what we can do independently. And you should do all that you can independently for your family. But it's time for us to get together to do collective uplift, because that's the only thing that's going to save the next generation right now. Because we don't have nothing to leave them, y'all. We really don't.
I want to just move to ask Isaiah, because I just want to make sure that we don't have folks out there waiting with a question that we haven't responded to.
We do not have any questions on our Facebook page, but we do have Elisa Jones Garner, who has her hand raised with a question.
All right, Alicia, you're up next. And you're muted currently.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you for having all of this information and having these wonderful speakers here. I greatly appreciate all the knowledge that they dropped on us today. And I wanted to respond to my sister's question and concern about not having wealth in our community. And there is wealth in our community. It's the fact that our dollars don't stay in our community. You have a lot more income than you think. It's how it's being placed, it's what we're putting our money into. We're not utilizing the same tools that white people have been using and the same systems that they've been using to hide their wealth, because that's all they're doing. If you look up income shifting, that's how a lot of these super wealthy people are going around saying, oh, I don't have any money, but they're billionaires. It's and these are things that it doesn't cost a lot of money to do, to set up, but we can amass wealth. It's all about learning those tools. One way that we can do that is sharing resources, not just in terms of money, but knowledge, of connections, contacts, because we all know someone that has a specialty in some area. We do enough work in this community to know who the movers and shakers are in specific fields, and we need to start pooling that information and making it available to us so that we all can grow together. That's part of the problem. We're all moving in a silo, and we have these blinders on, so we can't see each other, and we can't see, where the need is, and that has to change. It goes back to that African proverb: you can go faster alone, or you can go further together. I want to go further. But we have to come together. We have to start thinking in terms of, okay, I may not have access to this, but somebody does. Let me find that person and connect. Because what you lack, someone else may have in abundance, and vice versa. And we need to get back to that sort of communal thinking. We've been thinking like individuals, and that's not how we're set up. We're set up to be village, to be tribe, to be family. And we got away from that. And that's when everything got away from us. So I'm hoping that everybody here, is willing to get on board. I have no problem sharing resources. I work with a number of programs and organizations that have resources that make these connections. And I always take note, and I try to share when someone has a concern or is in need of something. I may not have it, but I know someone that does, and I connect them. And that's how we have to move if we're going to make any sort of real progress.
Thank you so much for that, Liz. I saw your what you shared in the chat. Really appreciate that. And, kudos for you and snapping my fingers about going further together. That's what's up. And that's what we're all about. I'm looking at the clock, so we're going to be wrapping up soon. But Deborah's got her hand out. Deborah's going to be, I think you're the last comment that we're going to take for the evening.
Okay, I just want to point out, we need to change our priorities. We need to get away from the overpriced gym shoes. We need to, when you get a raise, what I used to do when I would not touch a raise. When they would give me a raise for the first 3 or 4 months, I would just leave it into stock because I was at Procter & Gamble, or I would not spend the money. I would get it towards the end, but the first few months I would take that off the top. I was living without it in the first place. I'd put it on the side. When I had a recording studio, what we told the rappers was, get yourself an insurance policy. Put yourself on a paycheck, not to be out there. You can only drive one car at a time. You do not need 10 cars. Find one good car and keep it going. Same thing for jewelry. How much jewelry can you wear at any one time? You're starting to stand up there talking about you're wearing a Rolex and you've got your elbow coming out of your T-shirt. You need to change your thought pattern. Mama taught me, hey, we need to stretch it. Put a little more water in the soup, throw some rice in there, put some extra beans in the pot, and keep it going. And we don't have to always have the hamburger or the steak, or we need to just kind of say, change our priorities. We don't need 10 pair of white gym shoes, and that's the same shoe. And the only difference is that they have a different color streak on the side of the shoe. And once, if we can get to that stage and we undervalue ourselves, I mean, we saw Raisin in the Sun as we were coming up. And it tells a story where we got our money at that time point, and probably still today, is an insurance policy. Someone had to die for you to have an insurance policy, for you to get that extra money. But even then, did you spend the money properly? Did you spend the money and put it back into something that would give you a return? So again, priorities, just resetting your mind thought. The National Juneteenth Observance Foundation, for the next 6 months, our plan is to work on prosperity through Juneteenth. We're going to be teaching and talking to folks about Tandis, where we're going to be setting up groups of 8 or 10 people in different cities, where they will be investing a certain amount of money into a pot. And if someone needs the money, we will put it to that one person and then build the money back up. With the Juneteenth legislation, I'm told now that we're going to be able to get a commission. They're going to give us a commission. The commission will have some funds. Well, what our plan for that funding will be to accumulate it at the national level. And then we will assist all of our state representatives in all 50 states. They will submit their grant requests, their petitions to a committee, and we will vet their ideas and make them a loan or an investment in that particular city. So again, we're going back to working with each other. We're supporting each other. We're going to be the village that's going to raise the child in every city that needs to be done.
Hey, Tanya, can I actually just respond a little bit, if you don't mind, because I know we're short on time. Miss Deborah, I love you. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Alyssa, thank you for your comments so much. I'm going to just say one thing here first to start. So I own a business that's, I'm a Black entrepreneur, and my business serves the city of Sacramento's Black entrepreneurs themselves. So that's my work. My Black business serves other Black businesses, and that's all we do. I want us to be careful. We have to be very careful, okay? Very careful that we don't step on our own toes. The arguments for what we can do without reparations are actually anti-reparations arguments, okay? And we have to be very careful. You never, ever, ever want to say out loud, hey, we can do all this great stuff. We can do all these things without the reparations, because guess what's going to happen? When we go fight for reparations, guess what the politicians say? They say, hey, you don't need reparations. You can financial literacy yourself out of this. All you got to do is put your money together and Black business yourself out of this, okay? That's not going to work, and we know it's not going to work. Right now, a white household headed by a household head who has dropped out of high school, didn't finish high school, and is unemployed, has more wealth than a Black family where the head of the household has 2 parents, they went to college, and they're both employed, okay? Think about what I just said. Someone runs a household right now where they didn't finish high school, where they don't have a job, and they're more wealthy than those of us who went to school, have jobs, and are living in 2-parent homes, okay? That's the reality of the Black-white wealth gap today. Be careful, be careful, be careful. Do not give our opponents the ammunition they want to tell us why they don't want to do what we need to do. Yes, you can do the best you can for yourself. Yes, that's what we must do. And Alyssa, you're absolutely right. But I think toward the end, we were sort of mixing some stuff up, right? Because it's actually the collective thing to fight for the reparations, right? And the individual thing is to do what you can do for yourself. We call that doing for self, or it's a version of the bootstrapper argument, to be honest, right?
Chris, I'm gonna have to cut you because I want to give Lucretia and Dr. an opportunity for some final comments before we log off.
I think Brother Chris was just, he had it. I mean, I share the same sentiments. I know it's very hard for people to wrap their minds around the fact that like Black people are suffering right now. But when like Chris lives in Sacramento, when you go to California, who is the homeless in California? It's Black people, right? When you look at who was most impacted by COVID, it's Black people. our people are struggling and suffering right now, and it is directly because of slavery, right? We have a very unique experience in this country, and we have to stop running from it. We have to stop making it seem like we're on the same level as everybody else. We're not, y'all. And I know that people, it's hard for people to accept that because you want to feel powerful. I feel powerful doing the work that I do. There are ways for us to feel good in our skin that we're in right now. But in terms of our collective, well-being, we're not where we need to be. And we won't get there by accepting what is and trying to make do with what this nation didn't give us, the crumbs that we have, right? We have to fight for more. The National Black Worker Center, they're fighting on the front lines for Black workers. The other folks on this call, we're fighting for pieces of legislation that help push Black people forward. And the bottom line is that we need Black people to actually take action to move us forward, right? Like we can't, it's not, we have to get out of this individual mind state of like getting our stuff together and we'll be okay with our kids. As long as I fight for my kids to be able to wear their natural hair at their school, they're fine. But what happens when they go to work? Like we have to fight for federal Crown Acts, right? We have to fight for federal reparations. I'm gonna get off my soapbox, but I hope that people leave here today knowing that Juneteenth is only the beginning of Black people coming together and us coming to take what is ours, right? That's all I want to say, but I appreciate the labor of folks on this panel.
That's right, Lucretia. It's all of us or none of us. Dr. Eve?
I am in agreement with all of the above. But I want to address Alyssa mentioned about
2 minutes, Dr. Eve.
She said 2 minutes. Okay, so is this the question about freedom? Is this a question about
however
freedom?
you want to close it out?
Okay, because we ain't free until we wake up and realize that there's 99 other problems other than being Black. So I'm gonna start with that one because that ain't a problem, right? The other thing is we have to remember that we are even when there is a collective, we got to opt into the collective. It's not about being a silos. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses and our gifts and our talents. Do that and do it really, really well. But when we call you to action, in order for there to be a collective, you have to opt in to the movement. And that's how I want to simply close, because without that, we don't have a movement.
I know that's right. Thank you, Dr. Eve. Opt in to continue dreaming, opt in to imagining better futures, opt in to this collective fight for Black liberation. Juneteenth is just the beginning. Now we must work to free ourselves from the systemic chains of racial oppression in this country, and that includes paying Black workers equal pay to their white peers, stopping workplace discrimination based on the natural texture of our beautiful hair by passing the Crown Act, defunding police so that we can start to feel safer and as respected as workers and owners in our own communities, pass reparations legislation for the centuries of forced labor that Blacks gave to or were imposed on to Blacks to build the United States of America. Invest in ending voter suppression so that our voice and our vote truly does matter. And there's so much more. Today is a start. It's not the end. It's the beginning of not just a discussion, but a call to action. And I thank each and every one of you all for joining us. A special thanks, and my heart just extends so much gratitude to our panelists, to Dr. Eve, to Lucretia, to Chris, to Deborah. Thank you so much for the work that you are doing. Thank you for allowing the Black community to stand on your shoulders. Thank you for the education that you have provided us. Again, I just can't say thank you enough. This has been such an awesome experience. Again, I want people to check out the chat. If you haven't done so already, be sure to take action. There's still work that needs to be done. We had a link in the chat that we want people to click on, take that action, and continue the conversation. Wherever you are in the country, continue the conversation, commit to work in solidarity to build power to fight for liberation for people so that we can all be free. Thank you so much, everyone. Stay in contact with the National Black Worker Center through our social media, and please join our Facebook group. We've really enjoyed this conversation tonight. Thank you all again, and have a wonderful evening. The National Black Worker Center has a map that lists many Juneteenth events going on across the country. If you don't know what you're doing for Juneteenth, go to that map, find something that's close to you, be active, be involved, stand up, smile, and be proud. We've done a wonderful thing. Thank you all so much.
Good night.